The rain hadn't stopped in 2 days. London was always gray. Hey, my beautiful family, welcome to A Story a Day. It bring you powerful and deeply loving story. Subscribe please. But lately, it felt like the city had swallowed the color of his life whole. Ethan Carter stood by his apartment window, the faint light of dawn smudging across the wet glass. He hadn't opened the curtains for weeks. Not since Leela left, not since their divorce became official. The papers were still on the dining table. He hadn't even moved them. Her handwriting, that neat, elegant curve of her L, stared back at him like a ghost every morning. 2 months. That's what the calendar said. But time had stopped the day she walked out. Leela Hayes didn't believe in ghosts, but Ethan's scent still haunted her flat. She had moved to a smaller place near Camden, trading the view of the Thames for a quiet street filled with strangers. The mornings were lonelier, the coffee colder. She tried new brands, new mugs, even new routines, but somehow, every sip still tasted like him. They hadn't spoken since the court date. No texts, no calls, not even an accidental like on Instagram. Leela used to think silence was peaceful. Now, she realized it was just another word for pain. Ethan had changed since their separation. He used to be a man who filled rooms, charming, confident, effortlessly magnetic. Now, he spent his days in the shadows of his flat, working remotely for a design firm that barely knew he existed. His colleagues still asked about the wife sometimes. He always mumbled something vague like, "She's doing fine," even though he hadn't seen her face in 63 days. But he saw her everywhere, on the street, in the curve of another woman's hair, in the reflection of a passing car. He couldn't stop looking for her, and every time he didn't find her, it broke him a little more. Leela, meanwhile, tried to rebuild. She took up running again, the one thing Ethan had always teased her about. He used to say she looked adorable when she tried to catch her breath, cheeks flushed, hair sticking out from her ponytail. Now, every morning, she ran through Regent's Park, not to stay fit, but to run away from memories that chased her like ghosts. Her best friend, Emily, tried to help. "You're doing amazing, Leela," she'd say. "You're strong. You got out of something that wasn't working." But it had worked once. It had been everything once. They met 7 years ago, at a cafe near Notting Hill. Ethan had been sketching something on a napkin, a skyline, if she remembered correctly. She spilled her coffee on his table by accident, mortified. But he just laughed and said, "Well now, it looks like modern art." They talked for hours that day, and the next, and soon, every day after. Their love wasn't perfect, but it was real. They fought, yes, about careers, families, timing. But through it all, and always said one thing: no matter what, we don't walk away. Until he did, or maybe she did. The truth was blurry. Now, 2 months after their divorce, Ethan found himself walking down the same street where they first met. The cafe had changed name, new owners, but the smell of roasted beans and rain was the same. He hesitated outside the door, wondering if going in would feel like betrayal or relief. He stepped inside anyway. The barista smiled. "First time here." He almost laughed. Something like that. He sat near the window, at the same table where she'd once spilled coffee. He ordered 2 cappuccinos by habit. When the waitress brought them over, he smiled painfully. Old habits die slower than love. Leela, on the same morning, sat at her office desk, trying to focus on an advertising pitch. Her hands trembled slightly as she adjusted her files. Her boss was speaking, but she barely heard a word. Every line about communication and connection felt like a personal attack. At lunchtime, she scrolled through her phone, not to check messages, but to look at his old photos. She had told herself she deleted them all, but she hadn't. There he was, grinning on the beach, holding her hand at a Christmas market, pretending to hate her favorite songs. She whispered, "God, I miss you," before locking the screen again. No one heard her, and that was somehow worse than if someone had. That night, Ethan couldn't sleep. He kept turning on his side, hoping the emptiness beside him would shrink. It didn't. The pillow still held a faint trace of her perfume, jasmine and vanilla, his favorite. He sat up and pressed his palms against his face, trying to breathe past the ache. His phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. "Hey, sorry, wrong number." He knew it wasn't her, but his heart still raced for a full minute before he replied with nothing. He just stared at the screen, waiting for her name to appear, like maybe the universe would feel sorry for him and give her back. Across the city, Leela stood by her window too. The same rain fell on both of them, in different parts of London. She wondered if Ethan ever thought of her, if he missed the way she made tea, the way she left her slippers by the bed, the way she used to hum songs in the kitchen. She wondered if he regretted not fighting harder. She did, but regret didn't change anything, only deepened the cracks in her heart. One Friday evening, fate decided to play its cruel game. They saw each other again by accident. Leela was leaving a bookstore near Covent Garden, her hands full of paperbacks, when she turned a corner and collided with someone. The books fell. A familiar voice said, "Sorry, I didn't see." She froze. So did he. Ethan bent down to help her pick up the books. "Hey, stranger," he said softly. Her throat tightened. "Hi." The silence that followed was heavy, filled with everything they hadn't said in 2 months. Her eyes flickered to his still warm, still full of the same storm she once loved. "How have you been?" he asked. "Fine," she lied. "You look good." "You too." Their fingers brushed when he handed her the last book. That small touch felt like a lifetime compressed into a second. They walked together for a while, without planning to. Down the rainy streets, past the glow of cafes and lamplights, their footsteps fell into the old rhythm side by side, quiet but connected. Ethan wanted to tell her he still couldn't sleep without hearing her voice. Leela wanted to tell him she still kept his hoodie in her drawer, but neither spoke. When they reached the corner where their paths split, she smiled faintly. "Good night, Ethan." He swallowed. "Leela, do you ever?" She stopped him gently. "Don't, please." She walked away before he could finish, and he let her go again. That night, she cried for the first time in weeks. Not the kind of crying that comes with hope, but the kind that empties you, the kind that reminds you, some love stories aren't meant to heal, they're meant to scar. Ethan, meanwhile, opened a blank email. He typed her name in the to-line and just stared. After an hour, he began to write. "I saw you today. You looked happy. I wanted to say I'm sorry, not for what happened, but for what I became while it did. I wish I'd fought harder. I wish I'd listened when you said you were lonely. I wish I hadn't let silence win." He didn't send it. He just saved it to drafts, like everything else he never said. The next morning, London felt quieter, the kind of quiet that hides sadness behind its fog. Ethan hadn't slept. His mind replayed the scene outside Covent Garden over and over, her voice, her scent, the look in her eyes when she said, "Please." He wanted to respect her silence, but silence had become a slow death. So he did something foolish. He went back to the same bookstore just to see if she might return. He spent almost an hour pretending to browse novels he didn't care about. Every time the bell over the door rang, his chest tightened. She didn't come. Leela, on the other hand, couldn't stop thinking about him either. She hadn't expected to see him, and definitely not like that. He looked thinner, older, tired, but his eyes, they were the same soft brown that once held her together when she was breaking apart. She told herself it was just nostalgia, just a leftover ache. But that night, when she opened her laptop to work, she ended up typing Ethan Carter Art Exhibitions London into Google just to see what came up. He had always dreamed of opening a small gallery one day, and she used to push him toward it. No results. He hadn't painted in months. Something in her chest broke quietly. She closed the laptop and whispered to the dark, "You promised you'd never stop creating." 2 weeks passed after their encounter. Neither reached out, but both thought of the other constantly, like two satellites locked in orbit, unable to collide, but never free. One Sunday, Ethan received a message from Emily, Leela's best friend. They hadn't spoken since the split, but she'd always been kind. "Hey, Ethan, Leela's mother isn't doing well. Just thought you should know." He froze. Leela's mother, Margaret, had always treated him like her own. She used to call him "my second son" and send him recipes for Sunday roast. The thought of her unwell twisted his stomach. He typed and deleted a dozen replies before finally writing back, "Thanks for telling me. Please let Leela know I'm praying for her." He almost added, "and for her mom," but stopped. She already knew. That night, Leela sat beside her mother's hospital bed at St. Mary's, hands trembling as machines beeped around her. Margaret had suffered a mild stroke. She was stable now, but weak. "Don't cry, darling," Margaret whispered, squeezing her hand. "You're stronger than you think." Leela smiled faintly. "You sound like him." Her mother chuckled softly. Maybe because he was right sometimes. Leela's eyes filled. "Mom, please." "Sweetheart," her mother interrupted gently. "You can hate what happened, but don't hate the love that was real." That night, Leela couldn't sleep. She sat in the hospital corridor, staring at the city lights outside, wondering if Ethan had somehow felt it too, the ache, the worry, the love that refused to die. Ethan did feel it. He sat by his window again, holding the small wooden box Leela had given him on their first anniversary. Inside were little folded notes, 50 of them each, with something she loved about him. He hadn't opened them in years, but now, one by one, he began to unfold them. "I love the way you listen, even when you're angry. I love how you draw me without realizing it. I love that you still hold my hand in your sleep." By the 10th note, he couldn't read anymore. He pressed them against his lips and whispered, "I'm sorry, Leela." A week later, fate crossed their paths again. Margaret had recovered enough to go home. Leela had stepped out to buy some groceries when she saw Ethan standing outside the hospital, holding a small bouquet of lilies, Margaret's favorite. She froze. He turned and saw her. For a long moment, neither spoke. The sound of rain filled the space between them. "I heard about your mom," he said finally, his voice low. "I wanted to check in, if that's okay." Leela's throat tightened. "She's better now." He nodded, glancing at the flowers. "These were for her, but I suppose I'll give them to her," she said softly. Their fingers brushed again as she took the bouquet. A rush of warmth, pain, and everything inside flooded back. "Thanks," she whispered. He smiled weakly. "You don't have to thank me for caring." That night, when Leela told her mother who had visited, Margaret smiled faintly. "Good boy," she said. "He still loves you, you know." Leela looked away. "It doesn't fix everything, Mom." "No," her mother agreed softly. "But sometimes it's the only thing that makes the pain bearable." Leela went silent, tears falling silently onto her lap. Over the next few weeks, Ethan and Leela began to run into each other more often. At the same coffee shop, the same street market, even at the art museum. At first, it was awkward. Then it became quiet comfort. They didn't talk about the past. They just existed side by side again, pretending it didn't hurt. One Saturday, she invited him to an art event her company was hosting. "You always loved these," she said casually, though her voice trembled. He hesitated but said yes. That night at the gallery, everything felt like déjà vu. The lights, the hum of music, the soft clinking of glasses. Leela wore a pale blue dress, his favorite color, on her, and he couldn't take his eyes off her. When their eyes met across the room, time slowed. He walked toward her, every step heavy with memories. "You look beautiful," he said simply. She smiled. "You always said that." "Because it's always true." For the first time in months, she laughed. A sound so fragile and pure that it shattered something inside him. They talked for hours that night, about everything except the divorce, about art, London, books, and little things that didn't hurt. When he walked her home, she paused at her door. "Ethan." "Yeah, I don't know what this is, or if it should be anything at all." He nodded. "I know." But neither moved away. For a long moment, the world stood still. And then she whispered, "Good night," and disappeared inside before the tears could fall. That night, Ethan sat awake again. Every memory was alive. The laughter, the fights, the warmth, the loss. He realized something terrifying. He still loved her completely, but he no longer knew if love was enough. Leela, too, couldn't sleep. She pressed her face into her pillow, inhaling the faint trace of his scent from when he hugged her goodbye. It was maddening the way the universe kept putting him in her path, like testing if she was strong enough to lose him twice. She opened her phone and typed a message. "Do you ever think we made a mistake?" She stared at it for minutes, then deleted it. She couldn't send it, not yet. A few days later, Ethan got an unexpected call. It was from his firm. They wanted to transfer him to their Paris office. A fresh start, a chance to rebuild his life away from ghosts. He didn't say yes immediately. He thought of her, of London, the memories they'd made in every corner of the city. That night, he walked to the bridge where he had once proposed to her, the same spot where she'd cried and said yes under the rain. He leaned against the railing, looking at the river below, whispering to himself, would leaving mean forgetting her, or betraying her? He didn't know. Across the city, Leela stood in her flat, staring at the same old wooden box, the one that used to hold his notes. She had found it again while cleaning. Inside, she found the ring he had given her, wrapped in a small cloth. Her tears fell quietly as she held it. She whispered, "We were supposed to last." That night, she dreamed of him, standing on the bridge, in the same rain-soaked coat, looking lost. When she woke, her chest ached so deeply she could barely breathe. She picked up her phone, finally typing what she had been holding back. "Ethan, can we meet? Just once more. There are things I never said." She hit send before she could change her mind. Ethan didn't sleep that night. Leela's message sat on his phone screen like a small, glowing wound. "Ethan, can we meet? Just once more. There are things I never said." He must have read it 50 times. His fingers hovered over the keyboard before he finally typed back, "Name the place." Her reply came quickly. "Tomorrow evening. The bridge." The same bridge where everything began and ended. The next evening, London was draped in fog. The Thames shimmered under faint yellow lights as people hurried past, lost in their own worlds. Ethan stood there early, hands deep in his coat pockets, heart pounding. He thought about everything: the laughter, the arguments, the promises, the quiet mornings when she'd rest her head on his shoulder, the life they built, and the one they tore down piece by piece. When he saw her walking toward him, he forgot how to breathe. Leela looked the same, maybe even more beautiful in her quiet sadness. Her hair was tied loosely, her coat buttoned wrong at the top, like she dressed in a hurry. Her eyes, though, they held years of exhaustion and love all at once. "Hey," she said softly. "Hey," he replied. The wind carried the faint scent of rain and her perfume. Jasmine, always jasmine. For a while, neither spoke. They stood side by side, looking over the river that once reflected their joy. Finally, she broke the silence. "I heard you might move to Paris." He nodded slowly. "Yeah, just work stuff. I haven't decided." "It'll be good for you," she said. "New start." "Maybe," he said quietly, "but I never figured out how to start over without you in it." Her lips trembled, and she looked away. "Ethan, why didn't we try harder?" He sighed, voice rough. "We did, Leela. We just tried in different directions. You stopped talking to me. You stopped listening," he said, then winced, hating the sharpness in his tone. "Sorry. That's not fair." Tears filled her eyes. "We used to be so good at forgiving each other." "Yeah," he whispered. "Until forgiveness turned into exhaustion." She laughed weakly through the tears. "God, we were such a mess." "Yeah," he said, smiling sadly. "But we were our mess." There was a pause. Then she said the words that had been locked inside her for months. "I still love you, Ethan." The world stopped. His breath caught, and for a second, he looked like a man who'd been given back his heart. But then, the pain returned. "Leela," he swallowed hard. "I love you too. I never stopped." Her tears spilled freely. "Now, then why are we here? Like strangers?" "Because loving you," he said, voice breaking, "doesn't fix what we broke." She covered her mouth, sobbing quietly. He stepped closer, but didn't touch her. "You deserve peace. And I don't think I know how to give it anymore." The fog thickened around them, like the city was mourning too. "I keep thinking," she whispered, "what if we'd just taken one more chance? Just one more try?" He shook his head, his own eyes wet. "And what if we'd only hurt each other worse?" She looked up at him, searching, desperate. "So that's it? We just walk away again?" Ethan took a deep breath. "Maybe walking away this time means loving you enough to let you go." Her knees felt weak. "You make it sound noble." "It's not," he said softly. "It's killing me." They stood in silence for a long time, the kind that says everything words can't. She finally whispered, "Do you remember the night we got lost in the city?" He smiled faintly. "You mean when you refused to admit you read the map wrong?" She laughed through tears. And you said we'd never make it home? Yeah, he said, eyes glistening. But we did. Somehow. She nodded slowly. Not this time, though. No, he said quietly, not this time. Leela reached into her bag and pulled out a small envelope. I was going to give this to you after the divorce, but I couldn't. He hesitated before taking it. Inside was a photograph, the two of them sitting on their old balcony, laughing, sunlight caught in their hair. Behind it was a note in her handwriting. For every time we forgot how to say sorry. He blinked hard, jaw tight. Leela, I don't want you to forget us, she said. Just, don't get stuck there, okay? I can't promise that, he whispered. I know, she said softly, but try. It began to drizzle light, cold rain falling between them. He reached out instinctively, brushing a raindrop from her cheek. It wasn't rain, though it was a tear. Her breath hitched at his touch. Ethan. Yeah, if things had been different. They weren't, he interrupted gently. And maybe that's what makes it real. She closed her eyes. I hate that you're right. I hate that it hurts. Then, without warning, she stepped forward and hugged him tightly, desperately, like she was trying to memorize him one last time. He held her back, his face buried in her hair. Neither spoke. The rain fell harder, and the world blurred around them. When she finally pulled away, her lips trembled. Goodbye, Ethan. He shook his head weakly. Don't say it like that. How else do you say it? He wanted to say, see you soon. He wanted to say, don't go. But all that came out was, goodbye, Leela. She turned and walked away, her figure fading into the rain. He stood there long after she was gone, the photograph still clutched in his shaking hand. He didn't move until the city lights began to flicker on, until the world had completely swallowed her. Then, finally, he whispered to the empty bridge. 2 months after our divorce. And I still wake up married to your memory. 6 months later, Paris, a new city, a new job, new people, but the same hollow heart. Ethan walked along the same one evening, sketchbook in hand. He'd started painting again, his art darker now, quieter. One of his paintings had just been accepted into a small local exhibition. The piece was titled, The Bridge in the Rain. When people asked him what it meant, he always smiled and said, it's about someone I once met who taught me what love really costs. That night, after the gallery closed, he opened his phone and scrolled to her name. Still saved as, My Leela. He never changed it. He never could. He typed, I hope you're happy, then deleted it. He turned off the phone, looked up at the Paris skyline, and whispered, Good night, London. Meanwhile, in London, Leela stood on the same bridge one rainy evening, watching the water shimmer. She'd started a new job, moved to a new flat, met new people. She smiled more now, but it was never the same kind of smile. In her bag, she carried one of Ethan's old drawings, a sketch of her laughing on that balcony. She looked at it whenever life felt too quiet. Good night, Ethan, she whispered into the wind. The city answered with rain. Final scene. Two souls, miles apart, both carrying the same love, broken, but eternal. Some love stories don't end with reunion. Some simply live forever in the space between what was and what could have been. And as the rain fell softly over London and Paris, both of them, in their own lonely corners of the world, smiled through the ache, grateful they had loved, even if it broke them. 6 months after the bridge, the rain had followed Ethan to Paris. Different river, same melancholy. Every morning, he walked along the Seine with his sketchbook and coffee, pretending that the city's hum could drown out the silence in his chest. It never did. He was good at pretending now, smiling at colleagues, laughing when he was supposed to, saying I'm fine, with practiced ease. But at night, the act crumbled. The nights were the hardest. That was when she returned, not in person, but in fragments. Her laughter in his dreams, her voice whispering his name, her face reflected in the blank canvas before he painted. Sometimes, he woke up calling her name. Sometimes, he didn't wake up at all, just drifted through the dark, lost in the memory of her. London. Leela had changed too. Her hair was shorter now, something she did impulsively one morning. Standing in front of the mirror with scissors in hand, she thought cutting it would lighten the memories. It didn't. She still avoided certain streets, the bookstore near Covent Garden, their old apartment complex, that tiny Italian restaurant where he once told her she had the world's worst pasta eating manners. But she was moving forward, slowly. Her mother had fully recovered. Her job was steady. She'd joined a weekend book club, started writing again. On the outside, everything looked perfect. Inside, she was still bleeding quietly. One Sunday morning, Leela received a parcel. No sender name, no note. Just a small, square package. Inside was a thin canvas wrapped in brown paper. When she unfolded it, her breath caught. It was a painting, a bridge under the rain, the same one where they'd said goodbye. At the bottom corner, signed in familiar ink, Ethan Carter. Her hands trembled as she touched the edge of the canvas. She turned it over, hoping for a message, but there was nothing. Just a small post-it stuck to the back that read, "For when it rains." She pressed the painting to her chest and broke down. That night, she hung the painting above her desk. Every time it rained, and in London, that was often, she looked at it and felt like he was still somewhere nearby. Emily noticed it one evening. "You kept something of his?" Leela smiled faintly. "He sent it." Emily hesitated. "Do you think he still?" Leela stopped her gently. "Some loves don't die, Em. They just learn to live somewhere else." Paris. Ethan's art was gaining attention. People said his work had emotion you could feel from across the room. He knew why, because every brushstroke carried her name. At one gallery opening, a woman approached him, a journalist named Camille. She was kind, warm, full of laughter. They talked for hours that night, and for the first time in a long time, Ethan smiled without pretending. They began to see each other more. Coffee after work, walks by the river. It was gentle, uncomplicated. But every time she touched his hand, something in him hesitated. Camille noticed. "Who is she?" she asked softly one night. Ethan froze. "What?" "The woman you still dream about." He looked away. "Someone I loved." "Still do," Camille said kindly. He didn't deny it. Meanwhile, Leela had met someone too. A kind-hearted editor named Noah. He was calm, patient, the type who never raised his voice. He made her laugh again, helped her fix her leaky sink, brought her books without reason. He never asked about her past, though he could see the shadow behind her smile. One evening, as they sat watching the rain, Noah asked softly, "Was he good to you?" She hesitated, staring at the window. "He was, real." Noah smiled faintly. "Then I'm glad you had that once." She looked at him and whispered, "So am I." But deep down, she knew she'd never love like that again. The letter. On a quiet December evening, Ethan received a letter at his Paris apartment, a handwritten one, something rare in modern times. His heart stopped when he saw the familiar handwriting. He opened it carefully. "Hi, Ethan. I got your painting. I don't know if you meant for me to keep it, but I did. It's beautiful. It looks just like that night, sad, but peaceful somehow. I wanted to tell you that I'm doing okay." I smile again. I laugh again. "And sometimes, I even forget that. We broke. I met someone kind. You'd like him. He reads the same books you love." "Don't worry, I'm not writing to start anything. I just wanted you to know that I'm grateful. You loved me when I didn't even love myself. You taught me what it means to be seen. And I hope you're happy, wherever you are. You deserve that too. Always, Leela." Ethan folded the letter slowly. "It's wet." He placed it beside the painting he'd done the same week. He'd mailed her silhouette walking away through rain. He whispered, "Thank you," though she'd never hear it. Spring. Months passed. The world moved on, and somehow, they both learned how to live without drowning. Leela published her first collection of short stories. The dedication page read, "For the one who taught me that love isn't always forever, but it's always real." Ethan saw it one day in a Paris bookstore. He bought it, of course, read every page, and smiled when he reached the dedication. That night, he took out his sketchbook and drew her face one last time. When he finished, he closed the book and whispered, "It's time." He called Camille the next day. "Dinner? For real this time?" she teased. "For real," he said softly. London 1 year later. Leela walked across the same bridge on a quiet evening, the city shimmering in soft gold light. No rain this time, just calm skies and a breeze that carried the faint smell of spring. She stopped halfway, leaning on the railing, smiling faintly. A little boy ran past her, laughing. holding a red balloon, and for some reason, she thought Ethan would have smiled at that. She closed her eyes and said softly, "I hope you're okay, Paris." At the same moment, Ethan stood by the Seine, holding Camille's hand. The sun was setting, painting the water in soft orange. Camille leaned her head on his shoulder and asked, "What are you thinking about?" He smiled sadly. "Someone who taught me what love costs, and what it's worth." Camille squeezed his hand gently. "Do you miss her?" "Every day," he said quietly, "but I think she'd want me to stop standing still." Final scene. That night, rain fell again in both cities. In London, Leela watched droplets slide down her window, the bridge painting glowing softly under lamplight. In Paris, Ethan walked through the rain without an umbrella, eyes closed, face turned upward. Two souls under the same storm miles apart, hearts still connected by memory. Maybe they were never meant to last, but maybe they were meant to teach each other how to love. And though time moved on, and new names entered their lives, somewhere deep in the corners of their hearts, they still met every night in the rain. The gallery invitation. London had changed, and so had she. 5 years had a way of softening things. Grief, regret, even love. Leela wasn't the same woman who once cried over coffee stains and broken promises. She had found her rhythm again. Quiet mornings with tea, afternoons editing manuscripts, evenings spent walking by the Thames with her little notebook of poems. One crisp autumn morning, she found an envelope slipped through her mail slot. No sender name, just a silver seal embossed with the letter E. Her breath caught before she even opened it. She didn't need to. She knew. Inside was a formal-looking card. "You are cordially invited to the opening of Ethan Carter, The Rain Chronicles, an exclusive retrospective exhibition, Paris, November 12th. At the bottom, in faint handwriting, was a line only she would recognize. "For the ones who once stood in the rain." Her fingers trembled slightly as she read it. 5 years. 5 years since their divorce. 4 years since her letter. 3 since she last heard his name. And yet, here it was again, invited, gentle, devastating. Emily found her sitting silently at the kitchen table, invitation in hand. "Are you going to go?" she asked softly. Leela looked up, eyes glistening. "I don't know," she whispered. "What do you do when the past invites you for one last dance?" 2. Paris again. The city hadn't changed much. Still smelled like coffee and rain. Still looked like it had been painted by someone in love. Leela walked through the old streets, feeling both younger and older at once. She hadn't planned on coming, had almost thrown the invitation away, but something in her heart refused to let her. The gallery stood near the river, elegant and quiet. The night of the exhibition, it glowed with golden light. She entered slowly, surrounded by whispers, champagne, and the faint sound of a violin playing in the corner. And then she saw them, the paintings, each one a memory resurrected on canvas. Their first apartment, the cafe window where she once sat reading, the bridge under the rain, again and again, different seasons, different light. It was as if Ethan had painted every heartbeat they'd ever shared. Her knees went weak, and she pressed a hand against the wall, struggling to breathe. A voice beside her said softly, "They're haunting, aren't they?" She turned. It was Camille, graceful, calm, the same gentle warmth Ethan once described in his interviews. Leela recognized her instantly, the woman from the photos she had once seen online. Camille smiled kindly. "You must be Leela." Leela froze. "You know who I am." Camille nodded. "He told me about you. He said every artist has one muse, they never stop painting. You are his." Leela looked away, her throat tightening. "Is he here?" Camille hesitated, just a second too long, and then she said quietly, "He was. He passed away last winter." The world stopped. 3. The painting called Home. For a moment, everything inside her turned to glass, fragile, cold, still. The sound of people, laughter, music, it all blurred into silence. What happened?" she managed to whisper. Camille exhaled softly. "Heart failure. It was sudden. He was painting when it happened. The doctor said he didn't feel a thing." Leela stared at her, numb. Her knees trembled, and Camille gently held her arm, guiding her to a seat. After a moment, she asked, "Why did you invite me?" Camille smiled sadly. Because he asked me to. She reached into her clutch and pulled out a sealed envelope, old and slightly worn. Before that day, he left this for you. Leela's fingers shook as she took it. Her name was written in his handwriting, Leela Bennett. She opened it slowly. Dear Leela, if you're reading this, it means time has done what love could not, it's kept us apart. I don't know if you still think of me, or if my name has faded from your lips, but I think of you every time it rains. This exhibition, The Rain Chronicles, it's our story, told the only way I know how. Every brushstroke is a thank you. Every shadow is a memory. Don't feel sad for me. I lived a good life. I even learned to smile again. But no matter who held my hand, my heart always stayed by that bridge, beside you. You were never my mistake, Leela. You were my masterpiece. Ethan. The letter slipped from her hands as tears filled her eyes. Camille placed a hand on her shoulder. He painted one last piece before he died. He called it home. He wanted you to see it. Leela followed her to a small corner room, quiet, dimly lit. There it stood. A large canvas framed in gold. It was them. Two figures standing under one umbrella on a rainy London bridge. No faces, just silhouettes, but she knew. She'd know those shapes anywhere. At the bottom, in faint silver paint, were two words. Still here. The goodbye that came late. Leela sat there for a long time, long after the gallery emptied, long after the music stopped. Camille gave her space, watching silently from a distance. When Leela finally rose, she touched the edge of the canvas, whispering, "You always kept your promises." Camille walked her out, the night quiet and cold. Before they parted, Leela said softly, "Thank you for loving him when I couldn't." Camille smiled through tears. "He never stopped loving you, Leela, just helped him keep breathing." They hugged, strangers bound by the same man's heart. 5. One last rain. The next morning, Leela walked to the bridge, the same one where everything had begun and ended. Rain had started to fall again, soft, cleansing, endless. She stood there, letting it soak her hair, her coat, her soul. For the first time, she didn't cry. Instead, she smiled. A small, broken, beautiful smile. She whispered, "Goodbye, Ethan." And somewhere, she imagined him standing beside her again. Paint-stained hands, crooked smile, eyes full of love. Then she turned and walked away, not out of